One. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. The Wall Street Blockchain Alliance is very proud to offer our latest global webinar, Understanding Diversity and Inclusion in a Crypto World, with our very special guest, the one, the only, Amanda Wick. Before we begin, a bit of housekeeping for today's session. Please keep in mind that this event is offered for general information and educational purposes only. Nothing discussed is intended to constitute any investment, legal, tax, or accounting advice, and that any views or opinions expressed during the event are those of the participants. They don't necessarily reflect the views of the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance or our participant firms. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees will be in listen-only mode. Attendees, please, you're encouraged to submit your questions for our presenters via the Zoom Q&A function, and we will reserve time throughout the event to present audience Q&A. With that, I will turn this session over to our moderator and the chair of our Environmental, Social, and Governance Working Group, the one, the only Bibi Rubio.
Thank you for that warm introduction, and I want to first welcome everyone to our quarterly update for WSBA ESG Working Group. That is environmental, social, and governance, just to make sure. Social sometimes is mixed with sustainability, but it's social. My name is Bibi Rubio. I've been in my day-to-day job is being an international tax SME for over 25 years. My passion has always been in trying to run ERGs or make a difference in this world of ours. Today we're going to focus on social standards, which is part of the ESG benchmarks for companies who aspire to align with global sustainability standards. And what is social, or what does diversity got to do with social? Well, we have diversity under social. It deals with working conditions, our local communities, health and safety, believe it or not, as well. So let's imagine a world where every big achievement we're trying to achieve is in solidarity, triumphant, but a beacon of inspiration for others. Today, I would like to call out and mention some celebrations for the month. And that is to obviously acknowledge and commemorate tomorrow is Juneteenth. And that is the Juneteenth Independence Day for when slavery was completely ended and communicated to the other states. Our second shout out is to celebrate for the month our LGBTQ community, dedicated in celebrating lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender and queer individuals to honor the 1969 uprising for gay liberation movement in the United States. Now, without further ado, and why we're here today, our special guest is Amanda Wick. She is a founder and CEO of none other than the Association of Women in Cryptocurrency. Amanda, welcome, and thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule in reference to talk about what matters to both of us and we're passionate about, diversity, inclusion, and gender equity, or equity.
I'm always happy to stop whatever I'm doing and talk about this. So I can't thank you and Ron enough for having an entire discussion dedicated to it.
Thank you. Great. If you can give us a little bit of your background, of your, give us your story, because this is about storytelling. This is about us and celebrating our community and everyone that is included in that community called world.
Yeah. So my background, I was a lawyer for, I think, about 5 years before I became a federal prosecutor, but I just call that the time before. Most of my career was dominated by nearly a decade long of service as a federal prosecutor for the U.S. Department of Justice. I specialize predominantly in money laundering cases. I got into crypto money laundering kind of by chance when I caught a crypto case in 2012, I think. And then after that, it just was a very new technology, just the newest type of money/currency that money that people were using to launder money and commit crimes. And I did that for almost a decade. And then towards the end of my time at DOJ, I did a brief detail at FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And then after that, I left and went to Chainalysis, where I served as the chief of legal affairs for a year. And then I went to the Hill, where I served as senior investigative counsel for the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack. And then I left and founded the association, where I work full-time as much as possible. I do some consulting and advisory work on the side, but I try to spend as much time as possible on the association, where we're building a global network of women and allies to advocate for equal inclusion of women in the future of digital finance.
Thank you for that. And you have an extraordinary career, so kudos to you. I'm so, you know, nice to know you in this world of cryptocurrency. Now, WIC, I am also part of and happy to be with, as well as WSBA. I'm happy to be with.
We do not call it that. To be clear, nobody. It was nobody and put it into an acronym before we created it. We all call it the association. Some people call it AWIC. And the first time somebody said it, I was like, how did we never write this into an acronym before?
Yeah, it took me a little while to find it on LinkedIn. I was like, okay. But predominantly, your goal is to be able to make some difference in this very big world of male-dominated industries called cryptocurrencies, blockchain, Web3, and related industries, and whatever the future holds in fourth industrial revolution. And tell me, you know, I know that you and I probably experience this the same, you know, it's the same in financial markets. How does that translate? You know, how do we translate inclusion and diversity in the crypto world? And how could we make a difference?
Well, I think there's such a good question. It covers a lot of ground. I think one of the things that's really beautiful, because people sometimes ask me why the Association for Women in Crypto, why not just for women, or why not just generally? And I just happened to be in crypto, and that was the world that I was spending a lot of my time in. And I think you kind of have to eat an elephant one bite at a time. You can't really swallow it whole. And the second reason is there's a beautiful thing about the crypto blockchain Web3 community that I appreciate a lot more now that I'm on the industry side than when I was on the government side, which is, you know, sometimes they get it wrong, but most of the folks that have left industries and come here, whether it be leaving tech to come to crypto, whether it be leaving gov, or, you know, whether it be leaving traditional finance to move to digital finance, a lot of those people are coming with a mindset that what they were in was broken on some level and needed fixing. And what I have found is that the people in this industry are really receptive to the idea that what was also broken was inclusion, and that we could build this in better at the foundational layer, at layer zero, if you will, if we try to put intentional inclusion, if we try to recognize unconscious bias, if we just acknowledge that as humans, we weren't doing inclusion really well. We're just built in some ways that it's not our default. And so you have an entire community that's already wrapped its head around the cognitive dissonance of a lot of what we had is broken. And so when you have like a community of fixers, getting them to add something to the pile to fix, I find is a little bit easier than trying to explain it to somebody, you know, in TradFi, where they've been trying to fix it for a very long time. And I tell people it's kind of like a sunroof. If you build it in at the time that the car is being made, it's infinitely easier than trying to make an aftermarket sunroof. And so we're just trying to build inclusion in while this industry is relatively nascent and is still building and growing, to say, hey, we could build this a lot better if we start at the beginning.
And that is one thing that I admire about the organization. You've not only taken a local footprint, but you've gone worldwide. You're everywhere. And you're looking for
literally and
allies
figuratively.
And yes, allies and friends worldwide. And that is amazing. I can imagine the points you collect, but most importantly, you make a difference worldwide in trying to share this message of inclusion. Talk to me about those experiences.
Yeah, so it's really funny because when I left the committee at the end of 2022, is that what year we're? Yes, the year. But when I left the committee, I actually left and went to Thailand for about 3 months, right after we did our launch events in the United States. So we launched in 2022 with San Jose, DC, and New York. And I went to Thailand, and I was focusing on Southeast Asia. I had a couple board members in the US who were going to keep things going here. And then on the way back from Southeast Asia, I stopped in Europe and we did a couple of events there. And back at the beginning, this was all self-funded. I couldn't fundraise when I was on the Hill. So this was literally kind of straight up founder level. I'm gonna build this plane as I'm
Strapped
flying it,
on.
and we're gonna 100%. I had a backpack. I was flying on some sketchy airlines. I was staying in hostels. Like, it was hilarious. I still stay in hostels periodically, but that's because I like communal living, and we're a nonprofit, and so we're always running really lean. But back at the beginning, I did want it to be global for a couple of reasons. One, the technology is truly global, right? In the sense that the industry can be really siloed, but the technology itself literally globalized payments, globalized peer-to-peer payments. And I think people sometimes forget the beauty, the magic, the risk, the responsibility. There's a lot that comes with that when you disintermediate finance. And we had already brought people really close together with data sharing, with telecommunication, right? With Zoom. The missing piece of instant globalization was payment. And I think that's, that I'm actually working on a book with a writing partner where we're talking about like how that is changing so much, and it's actively changing, and it's going to change, I think, the whole financial world order. But one of the reasons why we spend so much time abroad, I spend so much time abroad. I actually went full digital nomad about 2 months ago. And it's because a lot of times people say they're global, and especially associations that are based in the United States, they say they're global, but they'll have like an event once a year in some foreign country. But I love meeting so many incredible women and male allies around the world. And it's given me this incredibly unique ability to see people in the industry where I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to know so-and-so. Like, on the other side of the world, somebody's doing something incredible, and the two of you should really, know each other. And I can do that at the anecdotal level, but the whole purpose of the association was to do it on a global level, especially with women, to say that if we know each other, if we support each other, if we help each other with opportunities, if we get male allies to join the fight. And I'm so proud that we have such incredible male allies who are vocal in the association. You've probably seen Ari Redboard.
We're gonna go there.
Right? But like, I think if you want to be global as crypto is, you really have to have a global presence. And so our London and Singapore chapters, our Ireland chapter, our Dubai chapter, all of these chapters are growing with predominantly women who share our ethos, and really want to build something that supports women, and they're okay with the advocacy piece. Because we tell everybody at our events, you have to be okay with the advocacy piece, because sometimes it's militant. It's not just professional networking. That advocacy piece, it gets people sometimes.
And that global perspective, I would have to say that I would think the barriers and challenges are probably the same. And sharing that with other perspectives and other cultures, and understanding, what their barriers to entry are in this economy, is also an amazing perspective to be able to help as well. So we're not just focused on the US, and and you're right, it is a global product at the end of the day. We should treat it as such. So I kudos to you for, trekking all around the world and finding similar individuals such as yourselves and myself, and interested in this, industry that I think it's in its birth stage still. So 30 years from now,
I will say, when people say it's still nascent and it's like 13 years old, I'm like, there are 13-year-olds that are having babies and driving cars. So you kind of have to give it a little bit of responsibility at 13.
Okay,
when it was 3, I'm kind of like, okay, but we kind of have to remember how old we are, and then like what comes with that. So I 100% love that it's still growing, but I struggle with that sometimes, because when people say, oh, it's still being birthed, it's still nascent, and I'm kind of like, don't do that, because it made a lot of mistakes early on when it was a kid. And now as a teenager, we need people to move into the maturation stage for it to survive. And that, like, with great power of inventing things comes great responsibility. And when you're inventing the future of finance, it's even more responsibility, right? If you were working at Uber, moving people around in cars, great. You helped solve a problem. But if you're moving around millions and billions of dollars globally, peer to peer, instantly, for pennies on the dollar, that's a level of responsibility that I need people to move into the teen, if not adult stage, as fast as possible for us to have
so
a
we're
chance.
In the teen stage.
Teen stage.
Rebellious at this point.
100%.
So talk about successful strategies. You brought to your community something that I have not seen done in any other community, or organizations, and I again, I give you kudos for that. Talk to people on Mammal the panel. And you've created, one of the things about inclusion and diversity is always finding allies. You've found a way to kind of crack that ceiling and be able to get some man to support your agenda.
Well, I will say we're cracking, like there's a lot more work to be done. I'm very excited. We have merch. So if you go to our website, you can grab Unmantle Your Panel merch. And I have to give full credit because Unmantle Your Panel actually was invented by my former COO, a woman named Clark Flint Barr, who used to work with me at Chainalysis. She's now at AARP. And we were talking about this initiative, over a year ago. And she came up with the name, and as soon as she said it, I said, someday we are going to make use of that. And it took us a while because we were still getting off the ground, and we started our initiative with actually an inclusion survey last year because we wanted to get a baseline metric. There had never been a study done of inclusion in crypto, blockchain, Web3. And I was like, look, 3, 5, 10 years from now, how are we going to measure our success if we don't, it's a data industry, you got to have data. So we had to get a baseline measurement of what does inclusion look like. And it was bleak. You can go to our website, womenincrypto.org, and you can download the State of Inclusion report. But it found that, not surprisingly, there's a massive gender equity gap. And it's actually even worse than tech generally. And there were some really interesting things about that survey. But to your point, I think what I've learned, and the concept behind Unmantle Your Panel, was that men are in a position to help women. And we didn't come up with this. There have been incredible movements, He for She, some other groups that have enlisted male allies. I'm biased. I just happen to think we have some of the most amazing male allies, Ari Redboard being one of them, a list of over 100. I think we're at over 130 male allies that have signed up on our male ally pledge, which, yes, I promise we have been getting requests to put it up on our website, and we will soon be putting it up. But there is something amazing about men making that change. And I remember on a day where a bunch of the male allies posted, somebody said, a woman messaged me and said, it's so amazing to wake up and see all of these men fighting for us and us not having to do that. And I think people don't realize. Yeah.
I want to take a step back. I want you to explain what Unmantle Your Panel means, just in case for individuals who have not seen the difference or not been to an event that, the association has held, just for those individuals who are totally new, don't know what that means.
Well, so two things. So one, there's the Unmantle Your Panel initiative, which is a 3-pronged initiative that includes all the male allies who pledge not to speak on a mantle, which is an all-male panel. It includes a pledge that conferences in the industry make. So we've worked with Paris Blockchain Week, Digital Assets Week, TET events, a bunch of different conferences, Blockchain Futurist in Toronto coming up, who pledge to have at least 30% women speakers. And this year we're actually adding either have 30% or no mantles just because of the numbers. And then the third prong, which is really, really important, is that we have a global speaker directory on our website so that conference events, organizers, they can go and find tons of women and male allies who are in the directory who are interested and willing to speak on a variety of topics. And they can search by topic, they can search by location. And so we're just trying to kind of like fix those links. And that's the Unmantle Your Panel initiative.
Great.
Obviously, at our events, we try to feature women, but we sometimes actually have men. We frequently have men on our panels because we don't believe in inclusion through exclusion. So all of our events, men are always welcome. We don't ever have women only events. Sometimes our panels are heavily women, but we generally, like where we have male allies, we include them all the time.
And thank you for that description, because and it was, like I said, it is very hard, especially in this world of financial, or any world, in this world, but to be able to be yourself and achieve that if you don't see it on the upper levels. And I've been in the industry for 25 years without aging myself, but I still am not able to find that person. And it's sad that after 25 years, I'm still looking for that C-suite person that made it, you know, that looks like me, and it inspires me to, yeah, maybe I can make it to that C-suite, you know, seat. But with all that saying, that's my journey. Can you talk about let's talk about that report, your state of inclusion report. What was the most, or maybe the top 3 relevant findings that surprised you out of the report?
Yeah, so I think the biggest findings that were surprising was that, number one, we thought crypto would be maybe a little worse than tech, but it was actually much worse than tech. So I think the general inclusion score of tech was, I think, in the 70s. And I think crypto was in the 40s. It might have been like 48 or 49%. So it was surprising that we did that badly in comparison. Now, in fairness, the thing you have to keep in mind there is that the tech general score came from all the tech companies that were surveyed by Diversio, the company that we used to do the survey. And their rate of women responding generally, I think, was 25%. So not as many women answered the tech general study, possibly because statistically there's not as many women in tech. But in our study, I think 75% of the respondents were women. So you had a lot more women who were answering what's the situation in crypto. So, you know, we did really heavy data analysis on what came back. And so we tried to kind of like look through everything at a lens of like perspective, right? So, you know, there are obviously probably a lot of men who would say, oh, I think the industry is just fine. But at least I doubt that, given the men who answered the survey. And that was actually the second really interesting thing we found, which was that, you know, when you have that many women answer a survey, it's probably not that surprising. I think 80% of them reported not feeling safe in the work environment, in the sense that the question asked, you know, physical, mental, sexual harassment. Like, do you experience harassment? Are you aware of harassment? Sadly, I think a lot of us weren't that surprised that women scored very highly on that. What was really surprising and kind of horrifying was that 49% of the men that responded said that they also were aware of safety problems, or that they felt that the industry was unsafe. And you have to remember, that's not just sexual harassment, that's mental harassment, which included toxic workplace environments. And I think a lot of us that have worked in crypto blockchain could say, unfortunately, they've been in environments where they're aware that some of these companies have really toxic work environments. Some of that's like the nature of sales. I know a lot of people who come over from, you know, selling one thing and then they're in sales and crypto blockchain, are like, it is a very it can be a toxic work environment. But that was really surprising with that. A lot of the men said, which is also, I think, why we get a lot of men who come to our events who are really supportive. We've had men come and say, can I join your mentoring program? Because if I ask for a mentor at work, like, my male boss will laugh me out of the room because for not knowing what I'm talking about. That's not what the response to somebody asking for mentoring should be. And so whatever the reason, when they come to us, we are ecstatic to have people because, well, I'll come back to the 2 roles in 1 minute. But the third thing that was also surprising, but was also really heartening, was that where we had more than 8 individuals who identified the company they worked at. So the survey was completely anonymous, no names. We had no idea who answered. We asked for location and demographic data, but no names, and we couldn't identify anyone. But where 8 people identified the company that they worked at, if at least 8 individuals identified their company, then we could actually compare company to industry. And we were actually able to see that some companies scored better on inclusion than the industry as a whole, which means that through policies, procedures, and culture, you can make inclusion better. And that's something that we're working on actively in the future with Unmantle Your Panel, in terms of building a certification for companies to do, you know, do you have an anti-harassment policy? Do you have workplace flexibility? Do you have the things that improve inclusion? Not just, are you coloring your logo with pride for the month, or are you doing, right? Not are you checking the box, right? Whitewashing or pinkwashing, pride washing, whatever it's called. But like, are you doing the things that reflect as inclusion that actually help underrepresented groups advance? And that's our focus for the next 3 to 5 years, is not just upping that score for the industry, but also working with the companies who want to improve inclusion. And we're really lucky to have some amazing sponsors who are on that path, but that's the focus over the next few years.
That's an amazing focus to be able to make a difference, and providing a safe place and empathy to individuals who are going through this on a daily basis. So this, going back, there is a question, so I'd like to address the question.
Yeah, it's actually a great question that's related to what I just said. And
are you considering to unman your board C-suite initiative?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And a second ago, I alluded to like the certification program that we're working on. And it's part of that, in the sense at looking at companies in terms of how they're evaluating that. Are they looking for diverse boards? I will tell you, there are initiatives as we speak, folks that are working on efforts to unmantle boards. There's a guy actually that we just connected with, Tim Connolly, and I know his project is looking at putting more women on boards, specifically, especially crypto, blockchain, Web3 companies. I will also say that's a great use of the global speaker directory. If you're a company looking for a board, I know some folks go through PR agencies, and there's all sorts of things that people do to get there. But the short answer is yes, we are actively looking at that and hoping to make it part of the certification to say, hey, do you have a diverse C-suite? Do you have a diverse board? I will say part of the reason why we're doing this certification is to look at it holistically, because a lot of times you'll see rankings where it's like, oh, what are the most diverse companies? And a company will rank really high because it'll have 2 or 3 women in its C-suite that they've put there. No offense, it's almost always a VP. It's almost always a HR person, right? There's like certain areas where women have done quite well at, but how often you see a CTO, how often you see a CRO, how often you see a woman CSO, or God, how we need so many more women CEOs. But the positions that kind of make the decisions and lead the industry, we need way more women in those positions. And so holistically looking at that and really saying, like, how do we really do this to make change? And I think that's one of the things that's different about us, and why we warn people about the advocacy, because sometimes it's militant. And I reached a point in my life where I can say the quiet part out loud, and that's what we're going to do. So don't get me wrong. Love that you have a chief of humans, but we also need to see women in all of the other C-suite positions, and especially more women CEOs, more women founders, more women CEOs. We have a massive pipeline problem. Yes, sometimes it's a matter of qualified women not getting the job, but the truth is we also have a numbers pipeline problem, and we need more women to go for those positions.
That I would have to say, I just read the outcome of Hispanic women, and it's still low. Less than 1% are at the C-suite level. And again, one of the reasons I still do what I do is to hopefully one day inspire anyone to make change like you do, Amanda, to see other individuals to strengthen our communities one by one. So I give you, this is one of the reasons I when you came out with the association, I joined right away with no questions asked.
I really have to say thank you for that, because it wasn't necessarily everybody's reaction. In fact, I remember one woman I went to when I was putting together the founding members, and she said, why do we need yet another women's association? And I said, that's a fair question, because there are a lot, and many of them seem duplicative. And I said to her, I was like, all I can say is the same reason why somebody invents a 3rd, 4th company that sells something that somebody else already made. Because you think you can do it maybe a little bit differently, maybe address a different customer base. Maybe you think you can do it better. That's just pure narcissism, and I admit to that. But like, I also was looking around, and I just didn't see I didn't see a ton of organizations that were really focused on the advocacy. They were really good at the networking. They were, good at a lot of things. And where they were good at that, we try not to duplicate. Like Maggie Love, when she founded SheFi, I was like, this is brilliant. And I send builders and founders to her all the time because the community that she has built is absolutely amazing. I am not reinventing the wheel where somebody built a really great wheel. But there aren't a lot of associations out there that are trying to do industry advocacy. And some of the associations out there, right, it's like, oh, this group like promotes this company, or this person promotes like their PR company. Fine, everybody's got their shtick. I'm not here to judge. But if what you want to do is support an advocacy association, then that's what we're here for. And for some people, they can't, which is why we tell everyone at the events, we have 2 really strict rules. The first one is no mean girls. I don't usually have to explain that to anyone who's run into a mean girl. The second one is male, female, non-binary. We are welcoming to anyone who wants to come and join, but they have to be okay with the advocacy, because what I don't want is a message that you got in trouble, or some people's companies, I can't be related to anything spicy. And if you do a post like, attacking so-and-so on International Women's Day because he took a picture of himself with 10 guys saying we're building better in the industry, and it's not building anything better, right? The advocacy is going to be militant. So we just warn people, if you can't have spicy, don't come to a Thai restaurant, right? Like, so it's really just to protect them, because like we're not going to get less militant. And I think we need militants. I talk to a lot of women who are like, I'm just so tired of being a part of something that doesn't feel like we're moving the ball forward. And the networking, the professional development, it's all really important. People love it, and it does serve a huge purpose. I'll tell you a funny story really quickly. When I was at DOJ, I was in this group called Women in Law, and we focused heavily on professional development. It was actually started by 3 brilliant women, and I volunteered to do mentoring circles. I was at an event and I met the leader of DOJ Gen, which was the gender advocacy group. I was not, believe it or not, a gender advocacy person at the time. I just believed in professional development. So this is where I volunteered. I saw the woman, I said to her, we should do an event together. We're on the same team. And she said, no, thank you. And I was so taken aback. And I said, I guess I thought we were fighting for the same thing. And she said, sort of, but kind of in very different ways. She said, we're fighting to fix the rules of a rigged game, and you're fighting to make everyone Serena Williams so they have a chance to win. And it really hit me. And it was the basis for when I started the association, that conversation sat with me for like 3 years. And it was always in the back of my head. And when I started the association, I thought she was right and she was wrong. She was right, but it needed to be both. It has to be that you are unfortunately teaching everybody how to be Serena Williams while they're playing the game. Because if you can't fix the rules fast enough, sadly, a lot of people have to be Serena in order to win. So you have to have both the professional development track and the advocacy to say, look, we're definitely trying to change the rules, but realistically, a lot of us still have to be Serena to win. And if you want to play to win, that's unfortunately sometimes where you have to go.
That is so true. Each of us has the power to ignite change. You're a spark. So definitely like someone who
like a forest fire.
No, not so extreme, but you're a spark to promote that change and to take it in a different way instead of the norm. The norm is, let's try to fit everything into the same box, but, we're all different. We all have different needs. We all have different expectations in life. And we all experience, the indifferences that come our way and how we react to them.
It's funny. I would actually push back on that a little bit to say that studies actually show that we are all wildly more similar than we like to think. In fact, one of the reasons why Meta and the social media companies do so well is because algorithms at their core measure the similarities in humans. And if you get to a certain level, you can almost predict humans are so yes, if you take into account demographics, age, right, like individual factors that can impact things, but humans ourselves are actually so wildly similar. And I spend like a bunch of time talking with people about that because it helps to understand that unconscious bias hits us all, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's age. Age is probably the hardest one for me.
Gender
doesn't matter. Like age is the one that I tend to struggle with, just because I worked on the Hill where everyone's like 22, right? Like the country in the United States is being run by children, right? And you just don't realize that until you get there. And I remember when I was on the committee, there was one of my colleagues who worked for me. She was like 24, 25. she had my job on another committee. And it was staggering to me. And I had to really turn my mental, like, as a person nearly double her age, I had to really shift my brain to think she can do what you do because she's been given massive amounts of responsibility. And I think, going back to something you said at the very, very beginning, one of the surprising things about doing over 50 events in 12 countries last year wasn't just the cultural differences, it was the cultural similarities. And one of the similarities that was amazing was that talking to women from around the world, the thing that we'd hear over and over and over is the best experiences they often had were frequently men. And the worst experiences that many of them had were older women, especially more senior women. And it's that senior piece that I think people don't understand, is that if you're somebody in a scarcity mindset, an older woman, an older person in an underrepresented group, a person who's been told that this is the woman pie, this is the black pie, this is the Hispanic pie, you think there's not enough pie. And so when somebody else comes along and they're going to get some of that pie, you are protective. And so we actually see a lot of support. I jokingly tell people, who are some of our biggest supporters? Old white men, who doesn't really have many scarcity concerns. Old white men globally, right? And they're like, there's lots of pie. There's pie for everyone. I never had to worry about pie. Here, have some of my pie. And you're like, okay, great. But historically, right, when you look at some of these underrepresented groups, they have not had unlimited pie. And so when we talk to people, especially young women, the experiences they've had at the hands of older women are sometimes the worst. And getting older women, and I don't say older, but more senior, right? It's not an age thing per se, but shifting your mindset to, if we do our jobs right, if as gender advocates, if we crush it, younger women should advance faster. Younger women should have an easier time. That's sometimes hard for more senior women who have sacrificed a lot, who have not had an easy time. And studies have shown that they look at people like that and they actually judge them more harshly. And I've heard it time and time again, where a senior woman says, I don't think she has enough experience. It doesn't look like she's ready for the job. And I'm like, is that it? Or you had more experience before you got the job and you don't think she's ready because you didn't get that opportunity. But oftentimes they are, in fact, 100% ready. They're digitally native. They've had advantages, like, we're doing our jobs right. Life is better for them. That means they should move up faster. That's a really tough discussion to have with some people, which is why sometimes our male sponsors are the ones who are sometimes a little bit more open to that.
And talking about, male sponsors and individuals who reach the C-suite, they're elder than us. It's being able to build those allyship relationships with them, because they become your biggest supporters, or should, because they're there, so obviously, in all my time working with ERGs, my biggest supporter has always been male white individual, or male, or a female white individual, where they make the decisions. And so you have to build those great relationships and have them help you make a difference. One site that I like to make a shout out is Lean In. They actually have an amazing allyship training for anyone who's interested. Just go to their site. It walks you through, how to find those friends up above, or even for me, for instance, I like to give a shout out to Ron. Ron is one of my biggest supporters in something that I'm passionate about. And, a lot of people would tell me, what does D&I have to do with crypto? I'm like, so much. We just spent 45 minutes talking about it. So barriers and challenges. There's a world of Web3 and cryptocurrency that I find very diverse compared to TradeFi, DeFi, and blockchain, I would say. How is your experience been the same? It is a more artistic, collective, different kind of world, I think, in Web3 and NFT and all that developing.
This is completely anecdotal and not based on any evidence. So I'm just going to preface that with, this is just my personal opinion. I think Web3 leaned in a lot heavier into the creator culture, in the sense of like art, artistry, like this being like an entry point, which is a lot more accessible than like crypto blockchain, which was super tech cryptography, right? And the perception that this is somehow, and I'm not saying it's not, it's very technological. But I think the conceptual, it's kind of like those of us that went into the social sciences, because yeah, science, but it's social, right? And so some of it's marketing, where I think Web3 did a better job at kind of marketing itself to a broader audience. And I actually think that's something that crypto and blockchain struggles with. In fact, I was joking with somebody about this the other day, where it's unnecessarily technical and it seems to always be making it like hip, cool terms that a lot of people don't know, which isn't really good for global or mass adoption. I was in my bank the other day. It took me hours to fill out paperwork, and I was like, hashtag why we crypto. But as I was sitting there waiting for the paperwork, the banker said, Association for Women in Crypto, isn't that just like scammy speculative coin crap? And I was like, I'm so glad you asked, because if I'm going to be trapped here waiting for hours, let me write out and explain to you why no, actually it's not. And we just kind of sat there waiting for the transaction to go through, and I mapped out a little piece of paper and basically did like a basics of crypto. And he said, this is very straightforward. I actually get it now. He said he had a friend who always posts about crypto blockchain on LinkedIn, and it's always so like hashtag IYKYK. I'm like, yeah, we got to get out of that. We have to stop making it seem like it's something like super complex and super cool and like this club that you have to be into. And it's literally just the future of digital finance, right? It's whatever the iteration of the tech will be, that's where we're headed. I feel like Web3 has done a better job of that message and marketing that. And we always kind of use the terms interchangeably, crypto, blockchain, Web3, just because they feel like it's all a bunch. It's like, they're not the same, but they're all at the same party, kind of like LGBTQ plus. Like, it's like, we're all very different, but like, if there's an attack, we're all together. Let's be clear, right?
Correct.
Like, we're all distinct until the outside world attacks, and then those wagons are circling, and all of a sudden it's LGBTQ plus all the letters, right? And I think that's the way it is with crypto, blockchain, Web3, where it's like crypto, blockchain, Web3 in a room, who's who, doesn't matter, because the minute that TradFi comes in, oh, we're all crypto, blockchain, Web3, right? So I think
true.
that like, I think the distinction, it matters, right? But I do think Web3, especially with NFTs and the art and, World of Women and all the incredible projects that kind of like went out and said this technology is for women, I think crypto and blockchain hasn't had the same. I think we're trying to change that. And I think that's why an association of over 500 women in 22 countries, and we're really a professional association. We're not even an enthusiast group. There are so many women's enthusiast groups. Like to your point earlier about the Latino community, Monica Talon and what she's doing with Crypto Conexión is absolutely incredible, right?
Yes.
What Cleve Mesidor and Tiffany, she's amazing. What Tiffany Smith and Cleve Mesidor are doing with the blockchain brain trust. I never get that right, but like trying to bring, Black business leaders into the community. Like there are lots of people out there who are doing amazing things, trying to get people exposed to the technology. I think especially for crypto and blockchain and some parts of Web3, they don't help themselves with the accessibility. And so we kind of have to manually make it accessible, right? And it goes back to, if you built in inclusion, and there's a guy, Robert Reuter, who runs WebQ, the LGBTQ plus community for Web3, and he just started the Inclusive Design Institute, the IDI. You should check it out at idi.org. And that's kind of his concept. It's like, look, I fight for gender, Monica fights for Latinos, Cleve and Tiffany are working on the Black community. Everybody has a community that's underrepresented. And what we all really want is just intentional inclusion, to say it would just be so nice if things weren't built by the same people for the same customer base, explained by the same people in the same way, because the way that people need it to be explained might be different, right? And the way that a Black person or a woman or a disabled person, right? All of these groups, there's a reason why every statistic says that companies are more successful with diversity. Things built by a bunch of different people that are built for a bunch of different people in a world that consists of a lot of different people are going to do better. So we just want a lot of different people at that table. I happen to be focused on women, but everybody has their thing and we all try to work together. And I think, fingers crossed, the IDI will be an umbrella that we can kind of all work on things together. But I think the more that we can be kind of militant in saying we have a chance to build this better at the layer 0 level, let's be more intentionally inclusive. And I find the crypto, blockchain, Web3 community really receptive to that.
And I happen to agree. I think success is not just about you, your organization, my organization. It's about accomplishing one particular goal and inspiring others, those young individuals coming up in the industry as well, and making a difference and opening doors for them as well, because I am grateful for my ancestors who made a difference in my life and opened the doors for me to be here in the United States. As an immigrant, I actually made it, not just financially, but also educationally, well-rounded individual. And I praise my grandmother for making my family come to the United States. And our experiences, are different, but we're all human at the end of the day. So I can understand the similarity information that you've seen, because again, we only come, we're all human at the end of the day. But
and I will say you make an important point. I just will say, Rima actually put this in the questions, and I think it's a really critical one, is that door opening can go both ways. Because I said, where older women can sometimes not give enough younger women credit. And Rima makes the incredible point that sometimes younger women, but also just younger people, ageism actually frequently goes the reverse direction. And there are a lot of folks that I know who spent decades in TradFi, saw crypto, and were just like, this is clearly the future, whether it was crypto, blockchain, distributed ledger technology, whatever you want to call it. They're like, look, we may be at the Napster stage, but I know that this is what's going to lead to Spotify and Apple Music, and I want in. And I think some of them struggle because, at companies of 20, 30-year-olds, right, when somebody's in their 40s or 50s and they're excited, like the presumption, right, that they are not interested in learning, or that they're just going to be like stodgy old people, right? I think you really miss out, because these people have a wealth of knowledge and information. And if they're interested in moving into crypto, blockchain, Web3, that means that they are learners, that they're growers, right, that they have a growth mindset. You take somebody with a growth mindset who also comes with all that experience. Now you basically have the intern. And do you want to be the one that fires Bobby De Niro and not have like that movie is a testament to what happens if you ignore the heady combination of experience and growth mindset and a willingness to learn. And I think Rima's exactly right. People sleep on the number of really brilliant people who are, senior in their careers, have decades of experience, but every day want to learn something new and want to grow. And she's right. Younger people need to look at those folks a little bit differently.
I'm going to check if there's any more questions.
I think we've knocked them all out. I will say something you said earlier, if I could just go back and pick on it. You said something about our events, and what I thought you might be getting at, we get questions about this a lot, is the facilitated networking that we do and how it's different, because we do events a little bit differently. I've had a lot of introverts in my life. I used to be married to one. I read a lot on how introverts operate. Some of my best friends are introverts, and I noticed a pattern in my life where I was surrounded by a lot of wonderful introverts. And it turns out, like, when you read about introversion and extroversion, it's actually not about liking people or not liking people. It really has to do with energy levels. And there's a really great book. I always butcher the name. It's Quiet Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking. Do you know the book I'm talking about?
Yes, I have it in my life. It's such a good book.
Really great book. And I recommend it not just for introverts, I actually recommend it for extroverts, because it really helps you not only appreciate the introverts in your life, but also like how to be better to them and how to value them and how to incorporate them into things. And what we do at our events is specifically geared look, I'm a 30E extrovert. You put enough people in a room, I'm gonna have a good time. But that's not how everybody functions. For introverts that socializing takes energy away, facilitated networking, it's not a magic recipe. It's just giving them a series of questions to answer so that they don't have to think of chit chat. So we usually break up into smaller groups and we'll literally circle up. Literally, sometimes we have people like just take their chairs, turn them around and circle like wagons. and we give them a set of questions to answer with each other. And it always differs and varies, but the last one that they always have to answer is, if somebody asked you, what do you need and how can I help? What would you say? And the reason we do that is because statistically women are terrible at asking for help. We are the first to say, how can I help? But we are usually the last to say, here's what I need, and I need your help. And so that question kind of forces them. Some of them have never thought about it. Some of them need a little bit of time. Some of them, it leads to really fascinating conversations, sometimes really emotional ones, which is really nice. And then you make meaningful connections with people. And we always have introverts who leave saying, this was the only time I've enjoyed a networking activity, because we went depth and meaning, which is what they want. They hate surface chit chat. And it was quality over quantity in terms of the interactions that they're having. So, we tell everyone, use it. It's wonderful, but like, it's a different way that we do our events. And I think people get a lot out of the networking, and then they make relationships. Like I get messages where somebody's like, I met her a year ago at your event, and now we're, racing buddies, or we swapped babysitters, or whatever it is. It's just really heartening.
I did experience that in my first event with your association. It was different. I've always networked my entire life, and never ever had I broken up into groups and spill my guts and actually talk about things that mattered more than just getting to know, or having to talk about what was the last score on the last game, or the weather. Because network is a skill, and not most people tend to feel comfortable networking, and your approach definitely helped with that.
I will say, I'm sure somebody invented it before me, and somewhere out there, somebody created the term facilitated networking and is like, this woman's running around taking credit. And if that person's out there, tell me who you are and I will give you credit. But a bunch of the questions have asked, what's the official title? And I looked it up. It's Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And it is by Susan Cain. But I always get it wrong. I need to commit it to memory, but it's Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And it's a great book. I've given it to some introverts, as and it's really, I find it's great for everyone, but I will tell you, if you're an extrovert and you have an introvert in your life, you will be a better partner, a better friend, a better coworker, if you understand and empathize with how introverts work, and respect that they often love people. Not always, but they often love people. I mean, I know some extroverts that don't like people, but it's really about respecting that energy level. And especially if your partner, I will tell you, there's so many things I would have done differently in my marriage. Having read that book afterwards, where I was like, ooh, that would have been good to have. But you just treat people differently when you recognize that a social interaction impacts people differently on an energy level, and energy matters. So I can't rave about that book enough.
There's so many studies out there on neuroscience, how to deal with different individuals, myself as a parent of an ADHD child, I had to learn that from the very beginning, they function differently. They think differently. And when I read that book, it kind of opened my eyes as well as to, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm a reader as well, so that was a very good book. I will also plug in again, Lean In. They do have courses in there about biases and microaggressions. I think that everyone should at least listen to a half hour of any of those, because you never know, we're all tarnished with biases from our, humble beginnings and raising, whatever our parents did to us. You call it whatever it is, but learning how to manage, to be a better manager and be able to manage people is really a skill that needs to be learned, especially in a world where we're not the same and we don't understand each other just because maybe there's a difference in culture or a difference in language or a difference. But those differences is what I consider brings us together in understanding each other. Your story, your voice, and your actions definitely give a potential to inspire greatness and change. It's been a pleasure to have you today. I know we spoke about this 2 years ago. It's been a long road, and
You've been there from the beginning. You've been there from the beginning.
Thank
I will
you.
say, I think if I could ask one thing, it would be that if you're a man out there, come to one of our events or do what Bibi said, check out the lean in resources, because I think one of the common questions that we get are, what does it even mean to be an ally, or how can I be an ally? And I will say, I think, we love when men come to our events. They are absolutely oftentimes 90 to 95% women, but the men that have come have often had eye-opening experiences. I remember a guy that was brought to one of our London events, and we did the facilitated networking, and afterwards he came up to me and he said, is this what it's like for you at conferences, just being the like such a small number? And I was like, yes, 100%. And he goes, it definitely made me hesitant to speak. I get it now, because he was at largely a male company. And then the best part is he said, I have to tell you, the weirdest thing was this man who launched into an explanation when one of the women was answering her questions, and it was clearly something she did not need explained to her, and he just kept talking over constantly. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever seen a man unnecessarily explain to a woman something? And I was like, have I ever seen have you ever seen a man have I ever seen a man explain? Have I ever seen mansplaining? And his face, he was like, oh my God, that's what that is. I've heard the term, but I've never seen it. And then he caught himself. He's like, wait, I actually think I might see this at work more than I think. And I said, I bet you probably do. But the thing is it's like the gorilla walking through the crowd until somebody points it out. You'd be amazed. This is why it's called unconscious bias.
Exactly.
We frequently don't see it. And so when you see it, you can't unsee it. And he still messages me sometimes and says, I saw it. And because I told him, you want to be an ally? Shut it down. Don't make the woman have to be the one to say, I don't need this explained to me. Be the man that says, I'm pretty sure she gets that. She does not need you to explain that to her in a nice way, right? But shutting down, being an ally, I like the lean in resources, like we get so many men who message us and say, I got invited to speak on this panel and I suggested this woman, or I asked that they add a woman. I told them I wouldn't speak, and women are getting seats on panels. We know it's working, and they don't say it publicly, and I'm fine with that. But every time they message me, my heart just swells. So
That's
it is
when you
working.
know that's when you know that the ripple effect, we're all in this world, together. The significance of that inspiration you provide, it's tenfold, I think.
I think there's so many people out here who are doing it. So to all the people, if you want to partner, we're here for it. For the Monica's, for the Clevs, for all the women who have been doing this for a long time, we're trying to catch up. And I guess if I had to say something, thank you to everyone who's joined the association, who's sponsored the association, who's donated to the association, for every single person who's done anything to support us. We've come a long way since October 2022. It's only been a little over a year. We have a long way to go, but I'm really excited about it. And I'm really grateful to people like you and Ron, who from day one just constantly asked us, how can we help? We wouldn't be here but for you guys. So huge thank you. Huge thank you.
Thank you for walking together in our journey of making a difference in this world. I want to take 2 seconds and recognize Brandon Roberts and Jerry Farias for helping us putting this together. And of course, Ron Quaranta for the support in bringing this to you from the bottom of our hearts. I think I speak for everyone. Thank you very much. We'll probably end a little bit early, but let me just check the Q&As.
Somebody did shout out that my English accent was accurate, which
I will
tell you, I'm always nervous. I'm always nervous because it is very difficult. If you don't believe me, watch how terrible Bridget Jones' Diary is. But it's a difficult thing, and it's like one of the most nerve-wracking things. And thank you to Rima, the lovely woman who put our website in there. Love you, Rima. I should have said it. I'm terrible at it. Yari is sitting there saying, womenincrypto.org is our webpage. We have a public LinkedIn page for you to follow. We put most of our events there. We're on Twitter and Instagram under @AWIC Global, all one word. And we have a members only LinkedIn group. So if you've tried to get into that, that is just for members. We're really excited about the things that we have coming up, events at Point Zero, at Singapore FinTech Festival, in Geneva, you name it. So it's a really good time to get involved. And if you're not a mean girl and you want to support other women and you are an ally who wants to advocate for inclusion, please reach out and contact us. We would absolutely love to have you. And Bibi, thank you so much. I can't
You're
say
more
thank
than
you enough.
welcome. Anyone needs to reach out to me. Our next quarterly event is in September for the ESG group. My email at WSBA is bbibi@wsba.co. This was lovely to have you. Thank you so much for doing this for us. Take
Thanks for
care.
having me.
Yeah.